if you have complaints about how the church is treating women, like Tikla said earlier, that's not the church. That's your dad. I love men. We just love men.
Too.
They're so great. So grateful for all that they do for us. We love
Guys,
you, men.
if it weren't for our men, we would be having this conversation in a grass hut.
I'm also seeing a lot on TikTok of I girl bossed too hard. I'm now the breadwinner. I'm miserable, and I want to be home with my kids.
If someone came to me and said, "Hey, can I just come and read a book to your children?" I'd say, "Hallelujah, you're in." Like,
yeah, you're great.
Enter all the feminists and all the beta males. Okay, here we go. Women, you need to submit to your husbands, right? All of us, we put on our feminism and we're like, what?
Life is hard. And so you have the choice. Do I want to have a hard life with meaning or a hard life that's empty? That's the real choice. It's not, man, if I could just go back and have been a lawyer or an architect, I never would have cried myself to sleep, ever. No, you still would have had hard things. But now, if you choose a family, you can have hard things and a family or part of a family. And that is worth it. It is a good plan to have a family.
The following is an episode of Ward Radio and does not represent the thoughts or the opinions of KHTS, its owners, or any of its affiliates, nor does it represent the official opinion of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy the program.
hello and welcome to the Women of Ward Radio. I'm Joy Hansen. I'm here with Brittany the Shadow, Tikla 5, and Charlotte Barnes. Amazing women. We are here to talk about the trad wife. There's a lot going on with this trad wife culture thing, and specifically we have some clips we want to respond to. Yeah, a lot we want to talk about here. So do we want to go ahead and jump into clips?
Yeah, well, let's talk about what trad wife is. Stands short for traditional wife, and I just looked up here on Wikipedia.
Well, that just sounds evil, Charlotte.
How dare you? Especially when you say it like this, trad wife. It just sounds so degrading.
It's like a dirty word, trad wife. Yeah. Who would want to be that?
You're a trad wife. Whoa, how dare? No, it says a trad wife, a traditional wife, in recent Western culture typically denotes a woman who believes in and practices patriarchal sex roles and marriages. Many trad wives believes that they do not sacrifice women's rights by choosing to take a homemaking role within their marriages, blah, blah, blah. So there's women who think, I would like to be traditional. I would like to stay home and be a homemaker and raise children. I will be the nurturer. My husband will be the breadwinner. And some people think this is a great idea. And there's women who have tried that and were miserable. And some who now promote being a trad wife is insulting, miserable, repressing. Don't do it. And they advocate to not be a trad wife. Instead of saying, I had a miserable time, they just say, don't do it, stay away. And so we're going to talk about a couple clips today. One is by Jenny Gage. Another one is also with Jenny Gage and Anita Templeton about how, advice they have for people to avoid being a trad wife. And we're going to debunk that.
And I would also say about trad wives is if you've seen like Ballerina Farm and some of the other like YouTube, Instagram shorts
Nora
and TikToks,
Smith. Yeah,
which are, I love Ballerina Farm, honestly, but there's lots of these, and some of them I think are clickbait. They're like trying to get rage watches where they're like overly done, where it's like just absolutely overdone makeup and flowery dress, and they're kneading their dough, and it's just all very romanticized and over the top, and it gets views because it's really fun to watch and fun to rage watch, because people who don't have that experience with it are going to be mad. People who don't have families are going to be mad. Everyone's going to be mad. And so I do think it started to get a life of its own with the hashtag trad wife, I think. And I went on a deep dive when it first started getting popular. I went on a deep dive to see, okay, am I a trad wife? Like, because I'm a stay-at-home mom. So is this like my vibe? Am I a trad wife? And I immediately felt like, no, this isn't me. Like, this doesn't represent me well. I wouldn't want to be called a trad wife based on what I'm seeing represented by this hashtag, in the sense that there's this kind of like over sexualization of it, and definitely kind of a competitiveness to it, where it feels a little bit like it's all about who's a better wife and who's better at doing these homemaking things, as opposed to doing it out of love for building a family. And so I think we can make that distinction, and maybe you guys can chime in. Do you feel like a Latter-day Saint wife, I mean, that's a very, very broad category, but in your experience as a Latter-day Saint wife, how might you distinguish yourself from the traditional trad wife as it's being displayed on social media right now?
I wonder if part of that, though, is just social media and everything's portrayed poorly. Um, so
Yeah.
I mean, I fit the traditional wife role. Like that's where I'm at right now. Um, so I'm not like, I don't know. I don't bristle at the idea of being called a trad wife. I just think it's kind of weird and not really necessary. But yeah, I just wonder, is that social media portraying it weird because that's what social media does, or is that actually people are being really weird?
Yeah, I thought Jenny Gage refers to, you can be happy and rich and loving your life like Ballerina Farm, saying like that's a good example of trad wife. And I'm sorry we keep bringing her up, but I think, yeah, social media is a distorted view of reality in one way or the other, exaggerated one way or the other. And I think to get a real taste of what traditional wife and traditional homemaking is, you need to go into a home. You need to visit your grandma. You need to um, remember your childhood. You need to visit the old lady in the ward, and like that's traditional. You need to learn about your ancestors and how much they sacrificed and worked hard for their children and focused on surviving and nurturing, because there was no time for hobbies. There was no time for there wasn't social media. That you just took care of your family. You tried to focus on the next meal. You tried to get a roof over your head. Like you worked together, husband and wife, with your children to make as good a living as you possibly could. So I think like to just look at modern day social media examples of trad wives, I think is very unrealistic and very underrepresentative of the normal traditional homemaking motherhood that humanity has experienced and is experiencing right now.
Yeah. Well, and also like take Ballerina Farm, for example. So yeah, some people could say she's a trad wife, but then also she's out doing pageants, or she's out, with her business and she's in like shipping off things. And so I think that there's a time and place. Like, I think it's hard to put people into a box. And so I probably fit a trad wife some days, and other days I'm like, no, I'm going to rock out in my sweats and I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go do something. And I'm probably not a trad wife that day. So I think there's like a time and a season for all of that. And I think women should be allowed to, if they want to be a trad wife one day, cool. If they want to try something else, cool. But I think it's weird when people demonize what they don't want to be. I think that's where it gets weird, and it's like, well, okay, so you don't want to make a pie? Like, cool. Like, I don't want to make a pie every day, but some days I really do want to. So let's get into the article and see what's her name, Jenny? Let's see what she has to say.
Yeah. So the first video is Jenny Gage, and she has a social media presence. She was raised in the Mormon faith, married, and then I think it was 24 years of being a trad wife. She left the church and got divorced, and now her main message is advocating that women need to become financially stable and be able to care for themselves, because your financial stability shouldn't depend on how sexy you are in your romantic relationship. So anyway, so instead of watching the whole thing, I just want listeners, if you come across somebody talking about their past and complaining about their past, especially if the past was in the church and now they're out of the church, trying to convince other people to be miserable also and to leave the church and try to convince them that everything that they've ever known, ever done is wrong. Pay close attention to the stories they tell about their past. I want to point out two inconsistencies with Jenny Gage. So the first video, the one in the Daily Mail article, at minute 2:30, She talks about how poor she was. Her husband earned all the money, even though she worked a lot in the family business. Her husband earned all the money, and he would just give her an envelope of money for groceries. She couldn't buy anything. And when they had sold this custom house, this tells, do you have that ready? Minute 2:30. Okay, so here's the clip talking about how she had nothing when she was married. Her husband controlled all the money.
I didn't even have a bank account. I should have said that in the beginning. I never had a bank account. He would give me little envelopes of cash to go grocery shopping with. Anyway, that house sells, the money goes in the bank. I just asked if I could buy myself a piano with the money. I had worked on building that house for 2 years. All of the money went into his bank account.
Okay, so she says, all I had was the envelope for money, and I just asked if I could buy a piano. Now, in the very same video, fast forward, please cue up 4 minutes and 10 seconds. She is talking about how financially great her life was when she was married compared to after she was divorced. She had no money and was living in a cart and couldn't even buy any milk. So I want you to hear how she describes her life while she was still married. Keep in mind what we just heard. She was married. She had no money. She just had the envelope of money. And now listen to what she describes the same period of her life as.
An hour, 4 hours a day, working as an assistant to a school teacher in an elementary school. I made $44 a day. For 24
This is after
years,
she was
I lived
divorced.
in $1 million homes. I vacationed all over the world. I spent my summers in Hawaii. I could buy myself $500 jeans, diamond tennis bracelets. We had boats and RVs and whatever I wanted. And it never bothered me.
So in the same video, she's saying, I had no money. I had to ask for a piano. 2 minutes later, she says, I had $1 million homes. I had whatever I wanted. I could buy myself $400 jeans and diamond tennis bracelets, anything that I wanted. So just be aware that the narrative she's sharing is not consistent. She is, when she's taught, anyway.
Also, is anyone else wondering, how big was that envelope that you wanted to buy a piano with it?
You could
pianos
buy a
are not
$1.
Well, the money for the piano was from a $250,000 increase they made on flipping a house. So from that, she wanted to buy a piano. But the point was, she had to ask for it. She couldn't just buy this piano. Whereas a few minutes later, she's like, I could buy $400 jeans. So which is it? Did you have to beg your husband for money, or could you buy anything you wanted? Another thing.
Yeah, to give her the benefit of the doubt in this one, it could be that she's looking back on different time periods of her life and early on in their marriage when they were pinching pennies, and then later. That could be. But I do agree there is an inconsistency here.
My other favorite inconsistency is in the second video. So cue up that second video of the interview with the three women. Jenny Gage is again talking about how poor she was. At 6 minutes and 20 seconds, she's saying again how she had nothing and that she never had alimony. Her husband never chipped in. And then you got to hear what the hostess says after Jenny complains.
The skin you
Wait, hold on. It's playing an ad. Give it 2 seconds.
Okay.
protect your skin with La Roche-Posay's ultra lightweight sunscreen with antioxidants
to defend against skin cancer
and prevent visible aging. Every day is a sunscreen day.
Okay, 6 minutes and 20 seconds.
And we were just too embarrassed to say anything about it. So one day I honestly just
I should point out that you've been sharing your story. We did have to legally reach out to your husband. He denies things that have been said on social media platforms. He says he provided alimony payments, final settlement, and is currently up to date on his child support payments. But separate from the finances of it,
and then she changes
as
the
you pointed
subject.
out, don't
So Jenny's saying he never gave me anything, and the host says, actually, legally, we had to contact your husband, and he says he's up to date on all child support and alimony. So, which is true. I don't know. It sounds like she is exaggerating how tragic her story is to get attention and to gain followers and to help young girls not want to become traditional wives. So that's my warning to you. Watch out.
Yes.
What story are they telling? What narrative are they, focusing on? And what narrative are they not sharing?
Well, and I think there's two reasons that I wanted to respond to this. One being that she's trying to make it sound like the church is the problem. The church is the reason for all of her problems. And the second one is that she's trying to make out trad wife life as doomed to fail, when I think really what she's saying is that sometimes marriage ends in divorce. Mm-hmm. And those two things are very different conversations to have. And so I think those are the two reasons I really wanted to talk about this. And I don't know if we want to tackle one or the other of those at all.
Go ahead.
But maybe in context of the church being the reason that she is in the situation that she's in now, currently, I think we have to come back to, okay, what is the church teaching us as wives? What have we been taught is our role? And so I think the easiest way to go about this is to go to Family, a Proclamation to the World, right? Where we talk about how does a family work? Basically the handbook, right? And we understand that by divine design, fathers are to preside over their families in love and righteousness and are responsible to provide the necessities of life and protection for their families. Mothers are primarily responsible for the nurture of their children. Now, in those things, there's distinct gender roles. Those are the only two things in the entire document. It doesn't say dishes, changing diapers, yard work. It doesn't say any of those things belong to one or the other. Managing finances, that's not one or the other. Mm-hmm. And even in presiding and protecting and in nurturing, it doesn't say exclusively. It says primarily responsible for. So I take that to mean that if my children are not being nurtured, that's my job to make sure that they're being nurtured. And my husband needs to make sure that we're provided for. And if we're not being provided for, that's on him at the end of the day. That doesn't mean he has to do all the providing, nor do I need to do all the nurturing, but that is a role that will be held accountable for at the end of the day. Everything else is open to both of us to do. And it goes over and over to emphasize equally and
help each other as equal partners.
Help each other. Yep. And so there's so many different ways this can look for a Latter-day Saint family. And we've always been really progressive on this. Like, I actually went so far as to, I thought, okay, well, maybe we're more progressive now. And we were kind of behind the times when she got married, because she was married a while before. I mean, she got married the year I was born. So let me be self-aware here. So I went and looked up General Conference from the year that she was married. Okay.
Oh, great. It was good.
Let's see if I can find it. Someone else talk while I find this quote.
Yeah. Well, while you're talking about what does the church teach about it, I'm reminded of that stat of BYU enrollment and graduation back in the first women's episode.
We are educated.
Yes. More she's saying, Jenny's saying, like, and other anti-trad wife ex-mos are saying, well, you're encouraged to drop out of college, you're encouraged to stay home. And that is just not true.
No.
Why would the school have this university and want everyone to graduate? And not want everyone to graduate. And the women graduation rate is higher than the males graduation rate at BYU. Not only that, there's this wonderful fallback plan that the church has for people who do have to not finish their degree for one reason or another. There's a poster, those big bulletin boards in your ward.
BYU pathways.
Right.
In every single meeting house.
Please finish your degree.
Yeah. It says, yes, finish what you started. They are bending over backwards to help people get degrees and finish their degrees. So we are not teaching, don't get educated and stay home. We are not teaching to young girls your beauty is what determines your financial stability. Your beauty is what determines the success of your marriage. What we are teaching them is work on your character, become a better person. If you and your spouse are both striving to become better people, you will have a better marriage. If you are striving for each other's happiness, you'll be better. If you are committed to a covenant marriage, you will be more likely to work out. And so when I see these women complaining about their experience as mothers, I really think it's not what the church is teaching, and more, they just had a really bad marriage, and my heart goes out to them. That's hard.
Yeah. I was just going to say that they're blaming their marriage or their individual mindset or how they view themselves and limit themselves and don't see their full potential, they're blaming that, or they're blaming the church when really they should be looking inward. It's easier to look outward, right? And blame the church instead of yourself or your spouse, or maybe you also didn't have those conversations when you were dating. That's also on you.
I mean, it said that their wedding was their 11th date or something like that. Their wedding was their 11th date. That's your choice, honey. You could have said, hey, I'm not ready. Hey, let's slow down. That was her.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we can kind of come backwards and say, oh, it was the church's fault. It was all these, all this pressure and this. It's like, well,
yeah. And all of life is learning, right? We've all made mistakes. She probably looks back and be like, yeah, that was not the smartest thing. But I wish she would have.
Maybe it was great.
Yeah. But I wish she would have grown from that experience instead of using that and harping on it to bash a church, and maybe teaching others, in a positive mindset. Instead, she's choosing to be super negative and kind of twist it and manipulate it into something that was never to begin with.
Yeah.
In one of these clips, she talks about wearing a seatbelt and essentially having a backup plan that marriage can fail, your husband could be disabled, yada yada yada. She tries to put it forward yeah, I'm fine if you do that, but just go make sure you're wearing your seatbelt. But then she literally says, and I quote, "Do not ever become a trad wife." So there is this kind of, you can't play both sides of the coin here. Are you saying this is awful for everyone, or are you saying, hey, let's be cautious? And if you're saying, hey, let's be cautious, great. I have no issues with that. Let's be smart about the choices that we're making. Great. But you can't expect both outcomes for here. You can't.
Yeah. And does she ever quote any data or anything about trad wives are so awful, the lifestyle is so awful, or is it just all of her empirical evidence?
Well, what interesting you should say about quoting data with Anitza in the second video. Where is it? 727. This is, I think, the most important part of the most ridiculous thing that she says, the most egregious lie that she says. So at 727 in that interview.
But some of these people who are over the age of 40 feel that this is the life that worked for them.
Sure.
That this makes them happy. This allows them to be home with their children.
Sure.
And be present. I can tell you're conflicted because it's a tough. You're a tough talker.
Sure. I mean, it is beautiful to stay home with your kids, and it is beautiful to raise your kids. But speaking of the women who are, spent 20 something years being a trad wife, and they do advocate for it, I think they're speaking from a place of, I don't want to admit that the last 20 years were miserable, and I don't have too much to go to the end, so I'm just going to pretend it's been great. You know what I mean? I think everybody was born as a dynamic.
Wow, can you believe she actually believes that? She feels that her experience as a trad wife was so negative, and that is the only truth out there, that any woman who believes otherwise, there's something wrong with her. So
she's just faking her happiness.
Yeah, she's lying. Trad wives are all lying. Yes. They're all liars.
They're all lying. Even if they say they're happy, they don't want to admit that the last 20 years were miserable and they were a waste. And, I don't have too much to go, so I'm just going to pretend it was good. That is not true. I'm almost 40. The last 15 years ago we were married. Not a waste. They've been absolutely amazing. I'm so glad I got married. I'm so glad I'm a wife. I'm so glad that I'm a mother. It is a great thing. I'm not looking back with regret, and I'm not crazy. I'm not delusional about it. Yes, there are hard days. There are hard days where I really just can't wait to go to sleep. I was it was a mulligan day. I was not my best for anybody. I have a new day. I will try tomorrow. We all have those hard days. But overall, it's been amazing. And this reminds me of the false consensus bias. There's a study, and you can look at that there in the Discord. In 1977, Stanford, Dr. Rossi had a study where he'd ask people, do you want to wear a sandwich sign? And tell people to advertise, and advertise for this thing. And the people who said, no, I wouldn't, when asked if other people also, if they would, they'd say they probably wouldn't either. But people who said they probably would wear that sign, they said other people probably would also. So you kind of just assume that other people feel and think the way you do too. Now, there's a next step of that, which is the false consensus bias maintenance, where you think anyone who doesn't think the way that I do, there's something wrong with them. And so that is what Anitza is doing, is she's saying, I feel horrible about being a trad wife. Everyone else clearly should feel horrible. And if you don't, you're lying to yourself. Or there's something wrong with you. So we just need, that is all over social media, where people are saying, I'm miserable, or this thing is wrong. It's like, I was thinking about this. Again, Anitza, she really clearly had an awful marriage, and my heart really goes out to her. I feel like she's one of those, when you go on Amazon and you want to look like, oh, should I buy this chair? I just bought bleacher seats for my kids' track meets. Like, should I get this chair? And you scroll down the comments and 4s and 5s and 4s and 5s. And then they're like, oh, this is great. Oh, it's so comfortable. And then you find a 1 and they're like, this was the worst purchase ever. I returned it. Anyone who gets this is such an idiot. Never support this chair. Never support this business. Can there be anything less than a 1 star? Can it be a -5 stars? And you just see like this rage on Amazon reviews for a chair, right? Okay. So I feel like Anitza is one of those really bitter Amazon reviewers, but for marriage, right? She's like, I had this horrible experience with this product and no one should get it. And everyone who says they like it is crazy. As opposed to, no, there really are honestly people who give it 4 and 5 stars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
go.
Okay. I think it's also interesting. I was thinking about this. Okay. I'm going to try and get my thoughts so it makes sense. I need a cohesive thought. But, okay, Christ and his gospel and his plan is a straight and narrow, right? And I feel like the world, we're on a pendulum, right? Where we go from trad wife to I need to be a girl boss, and we go back and forth. And it's interesting how we cross that line with Christ. And now, like, I see the anti-trad wife, but I'm also seeing a lot on TikTok of I girl bossed too hard. I'm now the breadwinner. I'm miserable and I want to be home with my kids, but now I can't quit because I'm the breadwinner. And if I would have gone back, I would have not girl bossed so hard. And I think that's like we have these two polarities, and it's interesting. It's interesting how Christ tells us, wow, okay, enter all the feminists and all the beta males. Okay, here we go. It's going to be, this might offend some people, but in the Bible, it's a Christian thing. In the Bible, what does it say? Women, you need to submit to your husbands, right? And we all, right, we put on our feminism, and we're like, what? I would never. Like, I have thoughts, I have ideas, like, I would never submit. And what does Christ say? Like, when you get married, right, you're with him in this marriage, right? You put the yoke upon you too, and you're with him and you're moving forward. Your husband is supposed to be leading your family. It doesn't mean that he's abusive and you have no say in your marriage whatsoever. It's saying, discuss, but ultimately submit to your husband as he submits to God. And that's
the key, that last part, as he submits to God.
Exactly. And I think the issue is some people view trad wives as not having a voice. And then other people view girl bosses as they're not nurturing their kids. They're not there. They're not doing their women's role. And I just think it's interesting how there's on my TikTok right now, I mean, I even put one in the Discord. There's those two polarities. And it's just interesting where if we would just follow Christ and the model that he's laid out, we would all be a lot more happier.
Yes. Well, and that's a great segue into what President Nelson, then Elder Nelson, said the year that this woman was married. This is 1989.
Oh, back to that. Thank you, Tika.
Yes.
When Jenny was married, what was the church saying about women and
we went far away from that for a second.
So he said, opportunities for development of spiritual and intellectual potential are equal. Masculinity has no monopoly on the mind, and femininity has no exclusive domain over the heart. The highest titles of human achievement, teacher, educated professional, loyal employee, faithful friend, student of the scriptures, child of God, disciple of Christ, trusted companion, loving parent, are earned under a uniform requirement of worthiness. And then later in the talk, he says, a wise woman renews herself. In proper season, she develops her talents and continues her education. She musters the discipline to reach her goals. She dispels darkness and opens windows of truth to light her way.
President Hinckley said that the year Jenny was married.
Nelson. This is Nelson.
No, the year she was married.
The year she was married. Yeah.
Wow.
And that doesn't surprise me at all, because these are the kinds of women I've been raised by, that I've grown up around. Strong, powerful women who have goals, but are actually empowered by their position as traditional wives. Yeah. And I know this has been the case for me. I don't know if you guys feel this, but because my husband provides for our family, I'm free to follow my dreams. I don't have to worry, is this going to be enough to feed my kids before I pursue something? I can know the food is going to be on the table. And with my extra time, I can go play the feminine role of building social fabric for no pay. I can volunteer. I can do artistic expression types of things because my husband is providing for me. And so I am deeply empowered by that reality in my life. And I'm so grateful.
That's so true. You know, our friend Tikla, who said, I am so grateful that my husband works and now I can fulfill all my dreams. I think that is such a beautiful perspective, that when that is possible, which it isn't always possible, when you have a man providing well for the family, if you have the perspective that, okay, now you can follow your dreams and do these art things, or I love that, make the fabric of society. Like you, Tikla, are all about creating community here and there and connecting families. And so many families are blessed because you are available to connect them. And I love men. We just love men. Too. They're so great. So grateful for all that they do for us. We love
guys,
you, men.
If it weren't for our men, we would be having this conversation in a grass hut.
That's true. Yeah. They built this all.
Can I read something that Megan texted me?
Yes, Megan, we wish you were here.
I know she wasn't able to be here today. But she texted me this and she said, if you want to share this, awesome. If not, no worries. But I just want to share what she said about her views on trad wives, because she's not married. She doesn't have kids. So I'm very interested in her viewpoint to see what she thinks about all this. She said, one of the best things that missionaries taught me was that my Heavenly Father wants me to be happy, period. The older I get, the more I realize that in order to sincerely articulate what will make me happy, I have to be entirely introspective. I can't be influenced by others in the slightest. I can't consider terms like traditional and non-traditional because those terms are a product of what the masses have determined. Do I like the street cred that comes with being an attorney? Heck yeah. Do I also want to retire from practicing law and be a full-time mom and wife on a farm in the middle of nowhere that rescues animals with a little art studio on the property? Abso-freaking-lutely.
I love Megan.
Megan, we love you.
I don't know. I just love it. I love Megan. I thought that was awesome.
That's so great. That's so great.
Yeah, it's wonderful to remember that there's no... Like the Family Proclamation and our prophets and apostles, they teach ideals, right? They teach what Heavenly Father, knows should bring us the most happiness. And there's not always one exact way to do that. So like my mom was 40 when she was first married, and she was 45 when I was born, and I was in daycare and she worked. She didn't work all day. Like she'd be home when I'd be home from school, if not a little bit afterwards. And I think it turned out okay. I love what so again, there's not just one right way to do it. to do motherhood. And also, I love what you said earlier. I forget, was it Joyce talking about seasons? So we just moved and my youngest just started kindergarten. This is definitely a new season in my life. And there's days that I just feel lonely or useless. Like I don't have a little person to be taking care of right now. And I'm doing the home things, but I'm just like doing them alone right now. And I'm just adjusting. And it is a new season of life as I now use this, as I'm trying to find, the dreams that I'm fulfilling in this time while still taking care of everybody. And so I'm going through that season right now in that transition. And I know that like when you become empty nesters and your children are all gone and adults, that's another transition. Like there's so many transitions in life as parenthood, as so many transitions in your life as you go through parenthood or as life in general. And I just think it's so important as you transition from one season to another is to not freak out and not look back at what you just went through in a negative light or think there's this horrible void now. Like be smart about how you transition. And if you need to get counseling, get counseling. If you need to bring in people into your community who are also going through that same season, like do it. Like get help and support when you're going through different seasons or going through transitions, because it can be hard. I feel like that's when maybe women would start leaving the church or questioning everything they've ever done as a wife, because everything that I've done until now is different or is now gone. So who am I? Well, you're still you. You just don't freak out. Like, get a little help while you make this transition.
I feel like every time we turn a chapter in motherhood, it's a promotion. Ooh. It's going to come with new challenges. It's going to come with new difficulties, things you haven't experienced before, but there are different rewards. There are different things that are amazing. And, making that transition definitely can be hard. Whatever transition you're making, from 0 to 1 child, from 1 to multiple children, from children at home to children at school, to children out of all of these transitions are difficult. But in all of them, God has designed it so that we are growing and becoming and being better than we were before, and we're getting a promotion.
I like that, Joy.
I love that. Oh, Tikla, you were saying that really interesting thing before the show. What was it?
Okay. So, two quick things. One is you can kind of watch this woman's worldview shift throughout her time explaining what's going on or what went on in her life. Mm-hmm. Because you can tell when she started her family, her worldview was family is the most important thing. And I think people on their deathbed would agree with that. And then as you watch her story unfold, understandably with some grief involved where her marriage fell apart, you see her worldview now shifts to the most important thing is making money. And that's a harsh way to put it. But I think it's really important to recognize that shift. Because if your worldview is the most important thing you'll do with your life is make money, then starting a family is not going to make a lot of sense.
Right.
Though technically married men make twice as much as single men. So go figure on that one. But if that's your worldview, you're going to look back on 25 years of raising a family and think, yeah, that was a waste because it didn't make me money. But if your plan, then the next thing she says is a man
Can I just jump in? Right. Wait.
Yeah.
When you're talking about having kids is, a bad idea if your life goal is to make money. So Jenny says in that first video, she says, I wish someone had told me, and she lists these things. And one of them was, don't have so many kids. And I thought, my first thought was, are your kids listening to this? Especially like your youngest 2 or 3. Did
like
they
14, right?
Right. Are they hearing you say, I regret bringing you into the world and being your mom? Like, that's so sad. Like, your children need to know that you love them and you're glad they're all there.
And what a thing to say after you've already done it. For somebody who's longing to have had the opportunity to have children, to hear someone say that and go, yeah, I did it all. And now I don't even care. Like, it just makes me so cranky. The other thing that she says in her TikToks and in this article is a man is not a plan. And I agree with her. to some extent. A man, if you're going to sell yourself to a man for money, that's not a good plan. However, a family is a good plan.
Yes.
And speaking now to young women who are making life decisions right now, a family is a really good plan. And yes, just like any career or any life choice you make, there are risks. Things could happen. You could have a child who has a disability. Your husband could get a disability. Your husband could lose his self-control, and he could do something really terrible and ruin your marriage. But that's not unique to starting a family. Life is hard, and so you have the choice. Do I want to have a hard life with meaning or a hard life that's empty? That's the real choice. It's not, man, if I could just go back and have been a lawyer or an architect, I never would have cried myself to sleep, ever. No, you still would have had hard things. But now, if you choose a family, you can have hard things and a family or part of a family. And that is worth it. It is a good plan to have a family.
Well said.
I'm going to jump in there. That was, yes, well said. Because I feel like we're going to have a lot of people like, well, what about the people with infertility? What about the people who can't have a family? What about the da-da-da-da? And there is nothing wrong with prioritizing the family that you do have, the parents that you have, the siblings that you have, your ward family. Make your neighbors part of your family. Like,
advocate for families in your community. Make a difference in the life of a child. Yes.
If someone came to me and said, hey, can I just come and read a book to your children? I'd say, hallelujah, you're in. Like, you're great. Like, there are so many things you can do, like Tikla was saying, to build the fabric of society that are so meaningful and so needed that you don't have to sit around and say, oh, poor me, I'm stuck at home and this is so sad and hard. There are things that can be doing that need to be done.
Yeah. And it's unique to us as women, even if you can't have your own children or don't have your own children. And this is going to be kind of out there. I shouldn't tack this on the very end, but I would say that you have been prepared to have a nurturing role in society from the moment you hit puberty and you started to monthly prepare to be a mother. Whether you want to be or not, your body prepares to be a mother every single month. And I think, and every month you grieve the loss of that opportunity, whether you wanted a baby
nice new
or
pants.
not. Sorry. But whether you wanted it or not, your body is grieving a loss every single month. And I'm convinced that it's that process that makes us tender enough to be nurturers. And so whether you have babies of your own or not, your physical body has been preparing to nurture people. And so embrace that feminine role that you have and nurture with the increased capacity that you've been given by virtue of your involuntary monthly sacrifice.
Interesting.
Oh, Tikla, I love that. Thank you so much.
We could do a whole podcast on it.
We can, and we probably will. But I mean, let's be real. If you put that parallel to the priesthood and say, what do we do when we're young, teen, preteen, that starts preparing us to become who God wants us to become? And for men, they start as little deacons and they start learning small ways to serve. And for women, we experience some other things that prepare us and shape us into who God wants us to be. Like, oh, no, you don't think that God planned this out. Crazy.
It's almost perfect, isn't it? Yeah.
I want you to pull up a picture there in the Discord. So some people will say, some antis will say, the church is a terrible place for women. Women are not respected. They're not treated well. They're squelched, whatever. So get out and don't get in. I absolutely disagree. The church is the greatest place for women. So this first picture is how the world views and treats women. So if you see that picture, it's Michael Douglas with his young, gorgeous supermodel wife, and Leonardo DiCaprio with his gorgeous young girlfriends, and then Donald Trump with his, and so and these other wives and girlfriends of LA. So these women are just so gorgeous, and once they're not beautiful anymore, they're tossed aside, and a new young beautiful woman comes, and once she's not beautiful anymore, or isn't, pleasing anymore, she's tossed aside and a new one is picked. So that is like a really common thing, not just in Hollywood. It's in Hollywood, it's in politics. Businessmen, politicians, athletes, they don't keep you. You don't keep women as they age, right?
And if you're experiencing that in your marriage, that is an influence of the world, not an influence of the church.
Do you know what the church not only teaches, but displays? The leaders of the church, these patriarch leaders of the church, how do they treat the women in their life? Show that second picture. These are our amazing leaders of our church, and they're sweet, old wives that they keep. Not only do they keep them, they love them. They cherish them. How many times at General Conference do we hear these sweet apostles and prophets just gush about their wives?
The way they talk about their wives.
Yes. Yeah. That's the example that the leaders of the church are setting. If you have complaints about how the church is treating women, like Tikla said earlier, that's not the church, that's your dad, or, someone specific, a bad experience that you have. The church is teaching to love your women forever. Treat them like queens forever.
And the best chance you have of having that kind of a marriage that doesn't fall apart is the church. Statistically, it's the best. Get married early, have kids right away when you can't afford them, and be sealed in the temple and have an eternal marriage, because your divorce rates will be lower. And if you follow the family proclamation to the world, your chances are going to be so much better that this family plan will work out. It's not fail-proof, but it's such a good plan.
All right. Thank you all. This has been wonderful. This is the Women of Ward Radio. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments down below, and have a great evening.